Hey there, YouTube. We are starting in a different part of the yard today. It's been a minute. I thought I would give you a garden tour to show you what the end of a season looks like here in Florida. We're going into our high heat season, so things are starting to die back. I thought I'd show you guys what that looks like in case you're also in a high heat area and somewhat new to gardening in that zone, and show you what's coming up. So I am starting out front today because I got some hanging baskets that I'm very excited about. I put some variegated nasturtium in here with the idea that they would just trail over the sides and be really flowy and beautiful. They are variegated nasturtium, which my mother-in-law found while we were out in North Carolina. And so we have matching nasturtium now. And I'm kind of obsessed with them. I cannot wait till they're flowing over the side. All right, so it has been a while since we did anything garden-y together. If you follow me on Instagram, you know my life has been super busy. My husband launched his nonprofit. He is starting a school. And so all of my extra energy has gone there and not into Simple Sanctuary, or honestly, really even my garden. It's a little wild and neglected, but that's totally fine. This, what I call early summer growing season, is always super short anyway. So this is when I tend to experiment with things and then try it again in late summer/fall. What we're gonna look at first is what we're already referring to as the chicken garden. You can see we are slowly in the process of building a privacy fence in this part of the front yard. We're planning on putting chickens up here. Here's my still roofless chicken coop that I'm still planning on fixing. I just haven't done it yet. But we are putting these great big long beds in the front yard, and we're gonna attach handles to this coop and just slowly move the coop from section to section as seasons change and let the chickens do their thing for that section of dirt. Now, this bed behind me, this portion of it, is dedicated to tomatoes. You can see it looks a little worn out, and that is because our heat is really starting to escalate, so things are starting to die back. You also may be thinking the tomato plants look rather short, and that's because they are determinate tomatoes. So they don't really get more than a few, like a couple feet tall, maybe 3 feet max, and just start pumping out tomatoes. And since our growing season for tomatoes is so short, that's what I went with to see if I could get better production than last year, and I absolutely did. So this first variety is obviously not a determinate. I had extra mystery paste tomatoes, so I stuck a couple over here. I call them mystery paste tomatoes because I don't actually know what they are. They came in a Dr. Witchy's packet, and I saved the seeds because they have a phenomenal flavor. They make great salsa. If I had enough, they would probably make great canning tomatoes. So I just saved the seeds from these. I'm starting to selectively save for the bigger ones and the rounder ones. So for instance, this beauty right here, assuming tragedy doesn't strike, I'm going to let it fully ripen on the vine and save it for seed because this is a lovely size. It's got a lot of weight to it, and I want more that look like this. Over here, this plant is another mystery paste. You can tell because of how high he goes. This is one that I'm not going to save the seeds from because, oh wow, he was not even that split this morning. He's just split wide open. Several of the mystery paste have done this. They seem to split pretty easily. It's part of why I really like that specific one because it hasn't done it yet, and I would like to get a version of this that really doesn't split that well or that easily. I mean, it just went wide open. Well, since we're here and he's not gonna keep, I'm gonna have a little garden snack. He's a little underripe, but I should be able to show y'all what the inside looks like. I love these. If this is actually a variety, you know, splits aside that you recognize and is a real variety, by real I mean like named, please let me know, because I really love the flavor. I'm gonna get tomato juice everywhere doing this. What you can see is that there's a lot of meat in this little dude. Forgive the hand trimmer. There's a lot of meat in this little dude, but it's also still very, very juicy. Now that could be partially because of all the rain we've been getting. They were this juicy last year, so I don't think it's just the rain. Obviously the rain is causing it to split, but even though it's slightly underripe, it's got a really deep and rich umami flavor. The riper this gets, it almost gets to be sweet, which can be kind of unexpected. I gave some to my husband, who's not the biggest raw tomato fan in the world, and he was really impressed. So if I can, you know, grow a raw tomato that he's willing to eat raw, I'm definitely going to do that. I love these. Again, no idea what they really are, but I think they're pretty fantastic, so I grow them. You can also see over here, the heat is really starting to affect this plant. I've stopped pruning it, partially from neglect and partially in case I can get a little bit more out of it, but things like this is where it got super hot one day. It shocked the plant, and it's just slowly creeping its way up. All right, over here we have got the cream sausage tomatoes that I was also very excited about. You may remember me talking about those in early spring. These plants, they are very delicate, so these stems are not strong. You want to make sure and cage them or stake them very early. We'll be growing these again in the fall. They are not shriveling up like a lot of my other tomatoes are. There is obviously some evidence of blight. So I don't think that they're long for this world. You can also see over here on these blooms, they're not setting anymore because it's so hot and so humid. So I'm not expecting to get much more fruit. I will probably just get these tomatoes that are on here and then probably pull the plant. So this is a tomato variety I am particularly excited about. These are called Tachi tomatoes, and they are like little slicers. They're gorgeous little, let's move that, little round globes. It is doing really well in this heat, so there is a little blight you can, there is a little blight you can see. We are getting some shrivels with the blooms. You know, this is as tall as it's going to grow, so it may not put out any more than these down here, but the ones I've gotten so far, I've really liked the flavor. And as you can see, that's a bunch of 6, and they are big. So I am very happy with this tomato variety. I got it from Haas Tools. I will be saving seeds from it and probably buying seeds for it again and again. I really like these. So you can see on a lot of the tomatoes, the heat's really starting to take effect. We're getting a lot of blight. We're getting a lot of shriveling. The lower branches are starting to die back, and it's making its way up. So I'm just kind of watching and expect to probably pull these tomatoes out in the next few weeks. Growing tomatoes in Florida is really more of a hope and a prayer than an exact science. The next one to show you guys is the Homestead tomato. This is the variety I was most excited about. They're supposed to be slicing tomatoes. I love, you know, like any other tomato fan, a good tomato sandwich. I don't know if it's me or the plant, but they really haven't done very well. So these are my Homestead tomatoes, and admittedly, I did prune these wrong, so this could be entirely my fault. But these are the only 2 tomatoes that have come off of it. They're still very young and very new. You can see I've had some issues with pests, so they're a little scarred up, but I have high hopes for them. But those are the only 2 I've gotten. And basically, by the time it started putting off blooms, it was already too hot. Again, I pruned these wrong, so I'm not making any claims about liking or disliking this plant. It is looking pretty hardy against blight. So there's a spot or 2, but not a ton. It's not as bad as the cream sausage, that's for sure. It's got a nice hardy stalk. It's It's a really strong plant, but I haven't gotten a lot of fruit off of it. What I'm planning to do for the Homestead tomatoes is try them again in the fall. Not prune them incorrectly this time and see how they do. They're from Haas Tools, which that company is from southern Georgia. They're in a very similar growing zone. The plant came recommended for hot weather, so honestly, I think it's gardener error more than the plant's fault. So if you're watching this and you have experience with Homestead tomatoes, please fill me in. Leave your advice in the comments below, and we can talk, because I really want to try one of those, and I don't have high hopes this season. May I introduce you to the Figurot. Isn't it awesome? This sweet little fig that has been trapped in a pot for way too long is now planted. He needs to be topped off with more dirt. When we first make these, the dirt always settles, so it takes a little bit to get it, I don't even know what word, to get it where we want it to be. So you can see he is super happy to be planted and in his permanent home. Down here I've put a little bit of sweet potato. Gonna let that go wild. I've got some amaranth in the corners. These little pink guys, I put some seeds in here just to see if I could get them to grow. I've had zero luck with amaranth. I knew absolutely nothing about them. I just thought it would be cool if we could grow some grain. But I haven't gotten them to honestly put off any true leaves. I've gotten a bunch of them to germinate, but then they just seem to go stagnant. So I'm not sure what the trick is there. I'll be doing some more research. Amaranth, from what I understand, do like heat, so that's probably gonna have to wait till next year for me to try again. But yeah, I don't really know where I went wrong there. I was really tempted to get the garden beautiful and in pristine condition before doing this tour. However, I had a friend recently say to me that she kills a lot of her plants, most of her plants, and so she wasn't sure. I can't even remember fully what she said, but she basically suggested that I don't do that, which is not true. I just plant a lot of things, so even when things die, it looks like the garden beds are still full. But that's part of gardening. Like, they gonna die. It's gonna happen. Okay, we have reached the section of the garden where I am having the most struggle. If you remember last year, this bed had a terrible case of fire ants, and I used a borax sugar mixture to get them out. And that worked about 90%. Like, it definitely broke up the colony. There were a couple still in there, but they've eventually moved on. The problem is, a lot of my plants looked scorched and started looking scorched before the heat set in. So I don't think it was the heat. I think it's leftover borax. And I think it has stunted a lot of the plants in this bed. So if you look, again, signs of death. I was really tempted to take it out, but I want to show you guys that all gardeners kill things. So this guy scorched and died really quickly. He never put off any fruit, no flowers, no nothing. And if you look at the sweet potato vine underneath him, it's showing signs of scorch too, which is, I mean, it has to be a really intense heat for heat to scorch a sweet potato. And that's part of what makes me think, oh, look at that bug. Makes me think it is borax. Did I get it? I didn't. Oh, those were straight up sting bugs. That's less than fun. If you're doing organic gardening, these are honestly your main form of pest control. So yay for squishing bugs. Anyway, that looks scorched. This pepper plant's doing okay, but you can see it's putting off some wonky fruit. I'm not sure if that's because it just didn't get quite enough water or what. And then up here, my okra, again, is very stunted and doesn't look super healthy. So it looks scorched. It's putting off these thin leaves, which is usually a sign that it's stressed when its leaves aren't nice and full and thick. It should be much taller by now, but it's struggling. And I think the issue is that there is still a little borax in that dirt, which is a desiccant, which is basically scorching my plants. So what I'm thinking of doing, and I'm going to turn so I can point, is as these die, so I'm going to pull out that dead tomato over there. As these plants die back, because we have such a long hot season, I'm going to fill this bed with some late zinnias and sunflowers. Zinnias to attract pollinators. Sunflowers will also attract pollinators, but I've read that they can help clean heavy metal out of dirt. And so what I'm hoping is that they will also help clean the borax out of this bed. I need to add soil to it, but I don't want to add soil just to contaminate it. So I'm going to do this step first and then see if that saves things. But if you look, I mean, look at the difference in size, right? So, I mean, granted, that is a zucchini plant. Those things do get, or 2 zucchini plants, they do get huge, but there's no struggle over there, and I didn't have ants over there, so it never got borax. Tons of struggle over here. There's also borax. So I think I shot myself in the foot with that a little bit. And honestly, the thing that finally got the ants out, like fully out and gone, was marigolds. I put some marigolds in there to try and attract some pollinators, to try and keep some other pests away, and the ants just left. There are no ants in this section of the yard. It's kind of amazing. And it's because I've put marigolds everywhere. So yeah, maybe try marigolds instead of borax, because my garden is struggling now. This is the original ziggurat. This did have some borax. I don't think that's the issue here. I think actually what the problem is over here, you'll see all these tomatoes are really skinny, is that this section gets too much shade. So it is right now about noon, and I am in Florida, and it is not raining, which means it is bright and sunny out here. Bright and sunny, shady. So what I think the problem is over here is that it's just too shady. They're not getting enough sun. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going into the hottest part of our year. In Florida, July and August is basically like our winter. Not much is going to grow. So what I'm planning on doing is just tearing a lot of these plants out as they die, replacing them with some pretty flowers, zinnias, sunflowers, like I mentioned, and letting those grow for a few months until our heat breaks, and then taking those flowers out and putting something else in there. My next video that I'm planning on doing for you guys is going to be all about high heat gardening and how I approach that. So if you're new to Florida, if you're wondering how to grow things in July and August, if you can grow your beautiful tomatoes during that time like the rest of the country can, I'll be answering those questions. All right, I have made my way back to the chicken beds, even though we don't have any chickens. It's a wishful thought. I am going to start pruning away, start taking care of this garden, get it ready for the rest of the rainy season, and get it braced for the high heat. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. I hope that this was helpful for anybody who's starting to garden in this part of the country. I know it's challenging. It is really hard. Please do not be discouraged if, it is mid to late June and your garden looks like it's dying. It's because it is. It's because it's really hot and really humid here, and not necessarily because you did anything wrong. So take some heart in that, and know that in September, we're gonna have some beautiful gardens that everyone else is gonna be lusting after. Thank you guys again for hanging out with me today. It was really good to catch up. We'll talk again soon. Bye.